Okay. Do you have dating app burnout? If so, you are not alone. There is a new trend going on right now that is being written about everywhere about how people are moving away from online dating and they're trying to meet people again in person. So if you look back a few years ago, dating apps were just the only way people met people, 90 some percent of the time. But before that, when I was growing up and dating and when I was getting married, everyone was meeting people in person. And now that trend is shifting back that way. So I want to talk about that today. And I also want to talk about 7 great ways to meet people offline for those who want to walk away for a little bit from the dating apps. And to do this, I have a great guest. Her name is Alyssa Deneen. Hi, Alyssa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And Alyssa is a dating coach. She's been one for several years. She's a personal stylist and she's the author of her book, The Art of Online Dating. And Alyssa also, what I love about her is that she has dated off and online. She's walked the walk, she's learned the lessons, kind of like me. But Alyssa has spent her career over the past several years helping people with the dating experience. So, Alyssa, tell me why this trend is going back to offline. What happened?
Well, I think there's really been a collective burnout on dating apps, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. But we've really been noticing it definitely in the last 6 months. And then if you've read any newspapers or magazines, you can see there's articles everywhere written about it now. I think people are really now trending towards wanting to meet someone in real life, and I think it's for a few reasons. But one is, during COVID, it was already going in that direction pre-COVID, but then during COVID, it was really the only way people were meeting anymore. And it really became people were reliant on the dating apps at some point, and it was kind of considered the only way you could meet someone if you were dating. And I think it was just accepted for a while that that was the way. And now, post COVID, everyone's kind of back out in the world. Everyone really wants to meet someone in real life. And I think that's because when you're dating online, so much of it is about messaging, and you're sometimes messaging and matching with, many people at one time. And it's almost like there's too many choices and there's not a lot of follow through. It's, you're sometimes messaging and with maybe up to 10 people at a time. And if you're not following through on those, with those people, you're not getting to the actual dates. And I think everyone's feeling that way. And so if no one's following through, then there's no actual dates happening. It's a lot of just messaging back and forth now. And I don't know really why that is, but I think a lot of it is, people just kind of getting a little bit lazy with it and not wanting to just, ask somebody out, and just kind of reliant on this pen pal situation where you can just message back and forth. So it's become really frustrating, really, for most people, especially people that really, are really looking to meet a partner and not just casually date. So yeah, we're really encouraging our clients to, sure, you can still do the apps. It is a great tool to use, if you're going to follow through, but also be, looking for more and more ways to meet people in real life, whether that's, joining clubs or, I'll get more into detail on that, but putting yourself out there in the real world in a new way. And I think that people were kind of had become sort of closed off to meeting someone in the real world. And now everyone's definitely shifting that mentality.
Okay, so I love it. And I never was a fan of online dating. And I never did it, if you want to know the truth, because I did it like a little bit, but I never was single during those times.
Mhm.
Now, I will tell you that I have a theory on what happened with online dating. I think people got so fed up with being treated so awful by these people because it's so easy to treat somebody badly online because you're hiding behind the app. They're never going to really have a way to get in touch with you. They don't know your last name. So people just blow you off because they meet somebody different, and or you go out and they, you weren't what they expected, so then they just ghost you. And
Mm-hmm.
people got tired of this cowardly way that dating apps allow people to be.
Mm-hmm.
So now
Absolutely.
I think people are like, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there, go head to head with this person in person.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love it. I think everybody should embrace this. And I think we all appreciated the apps during COVID when we didn't have other choices. But
Mm-hmm.
now go out there, girl. You know,
Yeah,
show
absolutely.
yourself. And if people don't like it, screw it.
Yeah, yeah. And actually to your point, I want to add something to that. Frankly, I think a lot of it also has to do with because it's so sort of anonymous, a lot of specifically men have started this, they just go right to talking about sex, messaging about sex before they even have met the person in real life. So it's one thing to, about you hear about sexting, of course, once maybe you're dating someone, but these are people that you've matched on a dating app, you've never met in real life, you've never met in person, maybe you've never even talked on the phone, and they're already referencing sex. And I know this is happening because I see it happen all the time. I'm on the apps myself because I have to be. And, I talk to all of my clients about it. And I think women specifically are feeling really, um, really, really frustrated and
Violated and not
violated.
respected. And you know
Exactly.
what, Alyssa? I'm so glad you brought that up because I want to tell people you deserve better than that, and you don't have to put up with that. And
Yeah.
that's why I
Yeah.
love this podcast because we're going to talk about these really wonderful ways to meet people offline. And guess what? You can have a lot more fun, even if you go out to these things that we're going to talk about and you don't meet anybody. There's all these other benefits to it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really happy about this trend. I think it's great.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, the other thing is that I think women have become so tolerant of that behavior because it's just, oh, and I did it myself. When I started online dating and men would reference sex, I remember at first being really freaked out by it, and then at some point you're kind of like, oh, I guess this is just modern dating now. I guess I just have to put up with that, and you accept all this really bad behavior, and for what? I don't, it's like obviously that person is not being respectful from the start, and there are plenty of men that don't do that. So what we're really encouraging people, and there's a whole movement behind this. It's this woman started this movement called the burned haystack dating method. I don't know if you've heard about this, but and I can talk more about that too. But where basically it's not tolerating any bad behavior, just all those people, not giving them even a second chance. Like, she says to actually block them, but unmatch them, whatever you need to do, just don't respond to that. And basically you're burning the haystack down to find your needle. And they are out there. There's the men that aren't going to talk about sex right away. They're not going to be disrespectful in a text message when they've never even met you, or hopefully ever. But her whole point is you don't need to tolerate bad behavior. You can, just block all those people, and you're going to eventually get to a smaller number of people for sure. But quality people.
And you
So
only need one.
you only
So
need one.
smaller numbers, good. I
And I
I
think,
just love it. I love this haystack woman big time.
yeah, you would love her. Yeah, she's great. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to remember that, especially as women, you don't need to tolerate bad behavior. I think there's this scarcity mentality out there that like there's not enough people, so you have to kind of tolerate some bad behavior in order to be partnered. That's simply not true. There are people out there that don't do that, and you just have to weed through the people that do and block them,
Well,
essentially.
there's certain things you can put up with. Like no one's going to be perfect. And there's certain
Yeah.
things you're always going to have to compromise for. And I even will use the word settle only because no one is perfect.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
settling is unacceptable for somebody who is disrespecting you and not making you feel the best about yourself that you can
Exactly.
feel. And
Exactly.
that's what that whole sexting and all that disgusting behavior does. It just makes somebody feel dirty and just bad about themselves and not respected. And I think people have had enough of it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of women were doing it begrudgingly because they felt like that's just what they had to do in order to date. And no, I think if enough of us say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that, then eventually it's going to catch on. And I do think that that trend is starting to take over, and that more and more it's going to be women saying no to that behavior. And I'm sorry to generalize. I know it sounds like I'm, being sexist here, but it really is the men that are being, going right to the
You're
sex.
not being sexist, you're being real.
I'm being real. Yeah.
You're
So
listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Do you have dating app burnout? That's what we're talking about today. My guest is dating coach Alyssa Deneen, personal stylist, author, and a Divorced Girl Smiling trusted professional. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we have Sorry. When we come back, we have 7 great ways to meet people offline. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Today, I'm here with dating coach Alyssa Deneen, and Alyssa and I are talking about dating app burnout, why people are moving away from dating apps, and starting to meet people in person again. So, Alyssa, with that said, don't you think there's something that is a little scary of making the transition from dating apps to going back to meeting people the regular way in person?
Yes, but honestly, I think people are ready for it. I think right now people are more, scared of dating apps than they are of
Yeah,
maybe meeting someone in real life. And like
right.
I said, trying to make a fun time of it while you're doing so, whether it's going with a friend to some of these things, or coming up with a hobby that you've been wanting to do in a
All right,
group.
let's get into
Yeah.
these. All right, so the first one is the old-fashioned setup. And so for me, that has always been my favorite way to meet someone. And tell
I-
me about why
Yeah.
that's coming back and what that looks
Yeah,
like.
and I think when people hear that, they're like, "Oh, yeah, sure. All my friends know I'm single. Of course, like if they wanted to set me up, they would." No, actually, no. I've heard this from people. A lot of people are afraid to mention it. If they know you're single, they don't want to step on your toes. They don't want to overstep their boundaries. They want to respect, be respectful. They aren't going to suggest it unless you suggest it. Honestly, I think that's just the way it is now. And I think also people are fearful that they're going to set you up with someone that isn't going to be your type, or it's not going to go well. But you just have to be really clear. Like, first of all, have to do follow up. You have to, reach out to people individually, follow up with them. This is the mistake I made. I reached out in a group email to a bunch of friends saying, "I'm single now, set me up with your friends that are divorced and whatever." And a couple of people responded, a lot of people didn't, and I got set up one time, but I didn't follow up. I didn't like 3 months later, I didn't say, "Hey, I'm still single, guys. Like, if you think of anybody, keep me in mind." I think you really need to it has to be top of mind. Everybody's gets, whatever. They're in their own world. They get sucked into
Right.
their life. They're not going to be thinking
Okay, but
constantly.
here's kind of what's a little bit bugging me about this. You put yourself out there and you showed this vulnerability, and you're a beautiful woman, and so you should do that. And I applaud you for doing that. And if I got an email like that from somebody as nice and as attractive as you and such a good person, even if I wasn't planning on setting them up because I just was like, that's not my thing. I don't want to get involved, for whatever reason, or I don't know anybody, I would have answered the email. Every single one of those people should have answered and said, good for you. You're so beautiful. I know you're not going to have a hard time meeting
I
someone.
maybe they said something encouraging, but what I mean is that only one person out of that group
Okay,
actually
because I was
followed
kind of
through.
mad at them. Okay, but I think I love your point of follow-up. And really, it's so funny because the same thing goes for networking. I do a lot of networking on
Mhm.
Divorce Girl Smiling, and I introduce people, and they'll say to me, "Hey, I had a really good meeting with so and so who you set me up with, like for business." And then they never sent me any business. And I'm thinking to myself, you had one meeting. And there is a study that
Yeah.
shows that you have to have 6 touch points with somebody before they trust you enough to give you business. So that
Mhm.
means that you would have to have 6 either emails, phone calls, send them a card, happy holidays, whatever, before they're even going to think about you. I think the same thing goes for dating. And you're right, Alyssa. Like, you have to follow up with these people and say, like, if they're your friends, you're going to follow up with them anyway. And,
Hmm.
people say to me, oh, I feel too desperate. Like, people are going to think I'm desperate. No, they're going to think you're smart.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's something that I thought too. And I thought, oh, well, people know I'm single, so, they would set me up if they wanted to. But it's just not the case. I think that
Right.
everybody forgets and,
They
it
have
needs
their
to
own
be
life. They're not
they're
thinking
in their
about
own
it.
world. Yeah, and they need to be reminded. So whether that's like, following up every few months or, every time you see the person, like, hey, just to remind you. Um, but also, just be open to meeting whoever it is that they're setting you up with. Like if you get into that mode where you're like, no, that person's not my type, or I don't want to meet that person in real life, then people are going to be frustrated. So I think you have to be open to meeting a lot of different types of people and just go into it thinking it could be just a friendship or a work contact or, whatever. But just be open. You have to be open-minded.
And what you're doing is you're building your network. So if you have dinner with a guy who you're like, he was really sweet, but not my type, that's okay. He's now
Mhm.
part of your network. You could have a party and invite him. He could have friends. You could run into him and he could be out with the love of your life. It's all about a big network,
Yeah.
especially if you live in the suburbs or like a small community. All the divorced people know each other. So
Hmm.
it's really kind of nice. I mean, all right, let's move on to the second thing, which
Yeah.
is you call it friend of a friend dinners. Tell me about that. What is
And
that?
actually, to your point, like what you just said, you meet somebody who's not your type, but you invite them to your friend of friend dinner. And what that means is everybody invites somebody who's single. So you invite all of your single friends, and everybody has to bring a single friend. And so the idea is to expand your network, right? So obviously, all the single people in your immediate friend group, but if they're all inviting someone, and maybe it's even somebody's inviting a coworker who's single, the idea is to expand the network of single people, and hopefully, people are going to end up meeting each other at these things. But hosting something like this, I know not everybody can host something like this, but I've even heard of people doing it in a restaurant, like having a private room in a restaurant or, doing it outside in the summertime, like, in a picnic type setting. But the idea is to, everybody has to bring someone else that's single. And maybe it's not even all single people. You could invite your married friends too, but they have to bring someone who's single.
Hey, you know what I love about this is that even if nobody connects, which I'm sure people will, like on a romantic level, even if no one connects, you will end up having the best time.
Mhm,
Everybody has something in common. You know what that is? They're single
mhm.
and they have either divorce or they're widowed or they're single. And what ends up happening is it gets to be a riot and everyone, it's almost just like a support group. So even
Mhm.
if nothing happens, you have now continued to build your network and make good friends and have a good time. But
Yeah.
stop taking the pressure off yourself that, oh, well, I did what Jackie and Alyssa did, and I had a friend of a friend dinner and I didn't meet anyone. Doesn't matter. It's going to increase your chances.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And our idea is that, it should be at least 8 people, because I think anything less than that, then people can't feel like they can break off and have separate conversations. And then also playing some kind of a game, whether it's like if you're doing it at dinner at home, after dinner, everybody plays like, Pictionary or charades or celebrity or something like that, just to kind of get everyone laughing and having fun together. And I really think this really can work if you keep it like maybe even a regular thing and you keep adding to it. Like every single person would want to be invited to a singles dinner like this. I mean, no matter what.
Okay, I had to walk away because I found this
Oh
game
yeah.
that I wanted to recommend. I
Yes, that's
played
another
this
good
at
one.
Thanksgiving with my nieces and I was crying. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah.
Really fun, easy little card game.
Cards
And
Against
just,
Humanity. Yeah.
yes.
It's
Okay.
too.
Oh, you know what, Alyssa? You're right. It's called, I have to say it because I'm on video, so I'm thinking everybody knows. Okay, this game is called Cards Against Humanity, a party game for horrible people. And you guys, it is hysterical. I
Yeah, that's
actually
really funny. Yeah.
it's very good and ice breaking and all that. Okay, let's move on to the next way to meet people, hobbies and clubs. Looking for a partner who shares your interests. There's no better way than to pursue those interests on your own because inevitably you will meet people in that process. Tell me about that.
Yeah, and I mean, this can really be anything from, joining a climbing gym if you're an active person. Of course, the running club thing is sort of the cliche. I don't know if you've heard about all these dating clubs there's a running club that's like turned into dating clubs. Have you heard about
Well,
this?
Miranda did it in Sex and the City.
Oh,
Remember
okay. Yeah. Well,
that guy?
yeah. So that idea, but like it could be, maybe it's a pottery class or you're volunteering to get, a volunteering situation could be really great for this because there's opportunities to chat and all of that. A language class, like an intro to language class, a trivia night. We've heard of this a lot. The trivia nights are really big in New York right now. So going to like a weekly or bi-weekly trivia night where you're seeing some of the same people again and again and bringing new friends into the mix, all of these things, or going to a local bar where there's social games like ping pong or shuffleboard or cornhole, anything like that. Another idea was going to bookstores where they have, authors reading and receptions afterwards. Of course, art openings, art galleries, are those kind of
And guess
situations
what?
too.
Guess what you're doing? You're building your network. So
Mm-hmm.
all of those people can set you up too. So
Yes, exactly.
I
Yeah.
just love this. All
Yeah.
right.
Right.
The reason
Yeah.
I'm a little bit rushing through it is we're running out of time. All right.
Okay. Okay.
Number four, watch sports.
Yeah. And a lot of people who aren't sports people are like, oh God, that sounds terrible. But what we mean by that is not just going to, like your Thursday night football game at a local sports bar, but more just if you're not into sports, like going to bigger events like, the World Cup or Olympics, going to not even necessarily a sports bar, but like your local restaurant that may be viewing the Olympics or Euro Cup or World Cup, anything like that. Any kind of big game like that, maybe not, the Super Bowl or anything, but something where you're going to be able to chat with people and it's not going to be a stressful situation. It's a social situation where people are engaging with each other and it's a common thing that you're watching together and you can chat about it. So I think that's also a great idea.
I went to a Kentucky Derby party and it was the funnest party I was
Oh
at.
yeah, that's another good one.
You
Yeah,
know,
sure.
okay, and of course, when you watch sports, there are guys around. Guys love sports, okay?
Yeah,
Call me sexist, but it's a fact.
yeah.
And if you go to Chicago, I have met more men in my life at Cubs games in Chicago than anywhere, I think, combined of anywhere else. They're all
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Gotta
yeah.
go.
Sure,
And it turns
Chicago is
out to be
actually a
fun.
great, yeah, Chicago is probably great for that actually.
Mm.
And
All right,
Boston.
next one is singles events. And you wrote, did you just shudder a little bit? I get it. Singles events used to have a shudder-worthy connotation. I love it. You catch yourself thinking, only people who are desperate or weird go to these events. Is that true?
Absolutely not, especially now. I think people are really, really and these are all my clients are looking for these events and they're not desperate and weird. I promise you that. So so it really is. I mean, I think this is becoming really popular, excuse me. So I think doing a search on Eventbrite where you can actually search your city, your age group. It's not a filter. It's not like you're choosing filters. You're just doing this in the search bar, Chicago 50 plus singles events. And maybe even it's not even singles events. It could even be like a type of, group event where
Wine
there,
tasting
wine
event or
tasting.
something like that. Okay,
Exactly.
Alyssa, don't you also feel like as we get older, things become less cringeworthy? Our mind is more open and we're not thinking about all the weirdos. We're
Well,
thinking
in
about all the
theory.
nice people. People get, what'd you say?
I said in theory, I feel like I know
Well,
some
I
of
just feel
my
like people
clients that
just
are,
get so much less judgmental. They're
yeah.
more open-minded. And I don't know, when I was in my 20s, I would have thought a singles event was cheesy and no way and people are weird. And probably same in my 30s, but maybe not in my 40s and definitely not in my
I
50s or
agree, but
60s.
also just on the to your point though, the 20s and 30 somethings are all really into the singles events right now because
Really?
they're all even more burnt out with the dating apps than our age group is. Yeah, 100%.
Well,
Yeah.
it's nice to see them feeling like they deserve more. All
Yeah.
right, next one is alumni groups. I've never thought about this, but
Yeah,
you're
this is one
right.
that's see every time I mention it to a client, they're like, that's so obvious. Why haven't I thought of that? But yeah, alumni groups is a great one. And especially at our age group now, there's tons of divorced people that are that are, like-minded people from your, who you went to school with that are also now divorced. So that's a great one to get involved with.
And like you could also Google, like if you went to Boston University alumni events, and you don't have to go in your year. Sometimes they just
Yeah.
have events just for all alumni.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a reunion. It's just,
Mhm.
networking events and, I've even heard of actual alumni singles events too. One person told me that they found that that was happening with their university. So I think all of that, it's worth checking out for sure, And also a lot of these things, you have to give it more than just one try. Like you could go to one alumni event and it might be terrible and there are only a few people show up, and you could go to the next one and it could be, dozens of people. So I think it's worthwhile to give everything a real good shot.
I just love this. And I feel like this whole call is so similar to job searching. So, when
Hmm.
you job search, think of your resume. You're going to look at your education and think, who do I know that went to Boston University that might be able to help me? Who do I know that also loves to do the hobbies that I have listed on my resume? Who do I know who I used to work with who might be able to set me up? So, think of it as like a resume almost.
Hmm.
You only need one job as you only need one person to find the love of your life.
Yeah,
All right,
exactly.
last one is Facebook. So, and I'm going to
Yeah.
also include LinkedIn because I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
good.
LinkedIn could be good too, for sure. And there's of course Facebook dating too, which, people have mixed feelings about, but
Yeah, tell us about that. Do you
it's
recommend that?
well, I mean, it's basically just like any other dating app. It's actually not connected to your Facebook community at all, which I actually think is a shame. I think it could be even better if it was. But what we're talking about is utilizing Facebook again as a tool and connecting with people you went to high school with or college with. And it's not even necessarily that you're asking people out randomly, but there's definitely a lot of other people who are in your network on Facebook that are also divorced or might know divorced people. So it's like, again, kind of like reaching out to your friends here, in your normal life, asking to be set up, reaching out to people from high school and saying, hey, I'm single now, you know, like keep me in mind if you hear of anyone else from school or, whatever. And of course, there's always the reunions too that you can tap into for that too. But Facebook I've actually heard of many people connecting with old people from college or high school and dating them, not even like necessarily old boyfriends or girlfriends, but even just people you went to school with and reconnecting with them and dating. So I think it actually is a good tool as well.
Okay, I want to leave the listeners with a couple more pieces of advice for in person and tell me if you agree with this, Alyssa. My dad used to say, you have to look nice wherever you go. Now, I'm not saying you have to dress to the hilt and like, have fake eyelashes on and go get blowouts every day. But what he used to say, like, even when you go to the grocery store, just look nice. Feel good about the way you look. Don't go in your yoga pants before you shower. Go home, shower, relax a little bit, and then go to the grocery store with a little makeup on and a cute little outfit, and you will increase your chances of meeting someone. I know you're smiling because don't you love my dad? He was the best. And he was like old school, but he also said, and put your phone away when you're out. If your face is buried in your phone, nobody's going to look at you and you're not going to see anybody either. So those are my two tips. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you're right, it's not even necessarily about, the way you look as much as your attitude, right? If you're feeling good and you're feeling like you didn't just, come from yoga class sweaty and you're going to run your errands, but you actually feel good about yourself, you're going to put that energy out there and people are going to be attracted to that energy. So it's not even about like, I've got to look good to attract the right person into my life. It's about like just feeling good about yourself. And that really does translate into the rest of your world and to people around you for sure.
I cannot agree more. Alyssa, I can't believe we're out of time. This went by so fast.
No.
Thank you so much for all these wonderful
Oh,
suggestions.
you're
I feel like
welcome.
I was listening and I was feeling like a little nervous or hopeless about meeting someone. This would be a big inspiration to me.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. We hope that it is.
And if you like what you heard and you want to reach Alyssa, the name of her website and company is called Style My Profile, and the website is stylemyprofilenyc.com because she's based out of New York City. And you can also find her in the Trusted Professionals section of Divorced Girl Smiling. And if you want to find other trusted vetted divorce professionals, you can also find them at divorcegirlsmiling.com. You can also go there to listen to more podcasts, read articles, download my mobile app, sign up for my free consult, or find more out. Okay. Or find out more about my new Dating After Divorce book called Who Let the Dogs Out? An empowering, funny, and inspiring guide to dating after divorce. I'm holding it up for those of you who are listening and wondering why Alyssa's giggling. I'm
Yeah,
so
love
always
that
giving
book.
the plugs if I can. And
Yeah,
Alyssa has a great book too called The Art of Online Dating.
cool.
So, and she's going to hold it up. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you real soon. Okay, that was great. And the internet was fine.
Yeah, I think maybe it must have been, yeah, we're at